31-year-old man who admitted to killing victims in his apartment, then dismembering their bodies, may have murdered up to 17 people.
A serial killer is on the loose in the Daytona area.
Investigators are on the trail of a possible serial killer.
A stunning claim from an accused killer awaiting trial in Pennsylvania.
And authorities believe they could very well have a serial killer in custody.
And they say it may be the work of a serial killer.
An accused serial killer.
Welcome back to a special Christmas episode of 5 Minutes of Murder. The segment where I, your ho-ho-ho host, Daddy Longlegs, takes a few special moments out of my day to look into the minds of the modern-day monster, known to us all as the serial killer. On tonight's episode, we're going to be getting a very special twofer, 2-for-1 that is, as we'll be taking a closer look at Dayton, Ohio's own Christmas killers, who were responsible for the Christmas Joy killings, aka a killing spree that started Christmas Eve 1992 and went through Christmas Day, ending with at least 6 people murdered. Meet Marvallous Keene and his right-hand man, Demarcus Smith. Keene was a self-proclaimed ringleader of a gang they belonged to called the Downtown Posse, and as I said before, his right-hand man was Demarcus Smith. The posse also consisted of Laura Taylor and Heather Matthews. And of course, who could forget about their 2 teenage acquaintances, Marvin Washington and Wendy Cottrell. I mean, tough-looking gang. The killings began with 34-year-old Joseph Wilkerson. Keene and his posse arrived at Wilkerson's home under the pretext of participating in an orgy. Pretty interesting orgy. They convinced him, and they tied his hands to the bed and proceeded to ransack his house. When then Keene, in the garage, found a .32 caliber Derringer. Once he saw this, he took it and returned to the bedroom and shot Wilkerson twice in the chest. Then they left. And just a few hours later on, Keene and Smith then approached an 18-year-old Danita Galitic while she was on a payphone. She was the mother of a 2-year-old girl and coming home when they pulled up to her and pulled out a .25 caliber handgun. Then, at gunpoint, they took her jacket, her shoes, and then fatally shot her. After that, Keene and Demarcus went around the corner to their local convenience store. They had their mindset on robbing the convenience store, but upon getting only $30 out of the cash register, Sarah Abraham, who was a 38-year-old convenience store clerk, was shot dead in the head by Keene. Right from there, they left the scene. Now, things with the whole posse were starting to escalate, and it was getting very chaotic. It was very clear to everyone that the posse were showing signs of concern. Keene feared members would talk, so he took it upon himself to start to clean house. That next morning, Keene would murder another Downtown Posse member, that of 17-year-old Wendy Cottrell. Then, shortly after that, Demarcus Smith would murder another Downtown Posse member, that of 18-year-old Marvin Washington. And then finally, the girlfriend of Keene, Laura Taylor, would kill yet another member, a sixth victim, that of 19-year-old Richmond Maddox. Now, all 3 of their bodies are basically left in a gravel dump somewhere on the west side of Dayton. Who knew Dayton had a gravel pit? Now, it didn't take much for law enforcement to start to figure this all out, as there were a lot of eyewitnesses to what was going on in the neighborhood. And now other members of the Downtown Posse were already starting to talk to police because they too did not want to end up in the gravel pit.
As we kept getting more and more victims with the same type of MO and the same type of ammunition used, it was clear that we had a group of serial killers.
2 days later, on December 27th, 1992, police cracked the case after receiving a tip that identified Demarcus Smith, and that he and the other assailants were driving around in a car in the neighborhood that was a black Dodge Shadow. Oddly enough, it was the same Dodge Shadow that was stolen from Joseph Wilkerson's property, the very first murder victim. Officers stopped the car and found Keene, and then found underneath his seat the .25 caliber handgun that was used in some of the murders. Surprisingly enough, they were putting these pieces together. Now, even strange was the fact that Keene was also wearing a jacket of one of the victims and a necklace of one of the victims. Now, the 2 adult suspects, Marvallous Keene, 19, and Heather Matthews, 20, and the 2 juveniles, Demarcus Smith, 17, and Laura Taylor, 16, were held in prison without bond. The prosecuting DA, Mr. Heck, said, due to the heinous nature of these murders and these crimes, he was then going to seek to have the juveniles tried as adults. What this would do is this would actually put them on the chopping block to receive at least 25 years to life in prison if found guilty. At his trial, Keene had a 3-judge panel. And basically what he told the panel was that he was being despondent over his death of his brother recently that year, and he had a falling out with his father. that this all contributed to him and his emotional state, causing him to murder and causing him to conspire with murder with the downtown posse.
I never meant for nothing like this to ever happen.
With all the evidence and the eyewitnesses, coupled with the suspects making full confessionals, to the point where not only were they admitting to the crimes, they were actually bragging to the police at this point.
The first time you shot her, where'd you have the gun? In her mouth. Okay. Then where did you shoot him? I think in the side and then in the head.
It did not take long for the court to render a sentence. On December 10th, 1993, just 1 year after the killings, Demarcus Smith, Laura Taylor, and Heather Matthews were all sentenced each to 194 years in prison or to life in prison, whichever one came sooner. Marvallous Keene, however, was sentenced to death, where he would sit on death row until 2009, where at the age of 36 he would no longer file any more appeals over his death sentence. At this point, for this long, he was finally done fighting. On July 21st, 2009, Keene was scheduled to be executed by lethal injection at the Southern Ohio Correctional Facility in Lucasville, Ohio. As a final meal, he got a porterhouse steak with A1 sauce, an entire pound of jumbo fried shrimp with cocktail sauce, French fries, onion rings, ketchup, dinner rolls and butter, 2 plums, a mango, a pound of seedless white grapes, and an entire German chocolate cake. Oh wait, and don't forget, 2 bottles of Pepsi and 2 bottles of A&W cream soda to wash it all down. Damn, I'm fucking hungry now. As Keene was strapped into the table, he was asked at that point if he had any final words. He simply shook his head and he replied, "I have no words." There on his back, he laid down, stared his eyes into the ceiling, closed his eyes. His chest slightly heaved as the drugs were administered. Then at 10:36 a.m., Marvallous Keene was pronounced dead.
The execution of Marvallous Keene has been carried out. The time of death was 10:36 a.m.
If there's ever someone that deserved the death penalty, it's Marvallous Keene.
And to that I say good riddance. I only hope that the other 3 are having an equally horrific time serving out their entire 194 life sentences rotting in prison. Wouldn't that be nice? As a chilling admission from Dayton, Ohio's detective Doyle Burke, who at the time was the lead investigator on the case. He commented, "You hate to rank tragedies, but in the case of the Christmas killings, these were especially haunting. They could care less about the victims' lives, or their own lives for that matter. To them, life had absolutely no value to them, and that was very strange."
It was fun. They enjoyed it. There was no reason. No one gave any resistance to them. It was just something for them to do.
Well, that's it for this episode of 5 Minutes of Murder. I guess tonight's episode, it just goes to show us that even during Christmas, murder can and will happen. You know, it just happens all the time, especially in the holiday. I'm Daddy Longlegs, and once again, reminding you to always lock your doors and windows, because even during the holidays, you never know when your 5 minutes will be up. Peace.